Hey everyone, my name is Yoshi and I play the bass. And today we're going to be talking about the dreaded M word, money. Now, money's traditionally not taught in schools or universities, and it can be a touchy and sensitive topic when we bring it up with friends and family. Now, I think that's a shame because money is one of the things that we all need to know something about, and I think more than it is, it should be more openly talked about. And it's especially important for musicians who are building a portfolio career, getting some of their income from here and there and there and there. But it's not talked about. And while I'm not particularly rolling in it, money is something that I've been passionate about, especially when I've been building my portfolio career since my undergraduate studies. And right now I own a house, I have a 5-figure amount in my retirement accounts, and I feel pretty comfortably in the middle class. And that's not an unrealistic expectation, I think, for anybody in their 20s. Now, even if you are not 100% in the workforce, if you're a student or an aspiring musician, I hope that you stick around because hopefully this video will give you enough seeds of little financial wisdom that when you do hit the ground running, when you do enter the workforce, you'll be able to do it that much more effectively with a stronger money game. So with that said, we're going to talk about 3 things that I think about when I think about finances as a musician. And step number 1 goes into a spreadsheet. So let's start there. Did that work? Did that? Welcome to the all-knowing spreadsheet. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to widen out columns A and B and do the same things with D and E. That way we have a little bit more room to work with. And then I like to highlight column C, which is nice and skinny, and color it a color so that I can easily see a division between my expenses and the amounts, and income and the amounts. Now, the list of expenses that I asked you to list up. Now let's type out here item by item. So rent, and don't worry about the amount for now. Let's just list these out. I have food / groceries / going out, car / transportation, supplies / equipment, and this can be like reeds or strings or pops or rosin or anything like that. We also have miscellaneous, so in case your cat needs to go to the vet, then you have that saved up. Speaking of saving up, savings, it's important to budget that in and treat it as a bill. And last but not least, taxes. If yours doesn't look like mine exactly, no worries, you might have more, you might have less. But as long as it's accurate to what your expenses look like month to month, then your job's done. Okay, now we're gonna go to total expenses down here. Wonderful. All right, now let's talk about the amounts. This is going to be different from person to person. For somebody who lives on the East Coast like me, my amount is going to be somewhere between $600 and $1,000. If you live in LA somewhere, you might be upwards of $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. Or if you're Graham Stephan, and if you do it just right, your rent might be 0. But for me, I'm going to write 600. Food / groceries / going out. For me, that's going to be like 500 a month. And once again, this is monthly we're talking about. Car / transportation. I am still paying off my Honda Fit, and gas costs money, so I will put $450 in this column. Supplies and equipment, probably spend about $200 a month. Miscellaneous, maybe $100 a month. Savings, some people say save 10% of your income, some people say 20, some people say 50. That depends on your savings and what you're investing in. If you're investing in IRAs or real estate or precious metals or cryptocurrency or anything. But for now, let's just put a sizable number of $300. And taxes, this can also be difficult to budget for because everyone's going to be taxed a little bit differently. So for now, I'm just going to write 500, which is a reasonable amount. And down here for total expenses, what I'm going to type is equals sign SUM. If you remember from math class, sum means addition. And so open parentheses, once you open that up, you can select this number and it creates a blue box. And you can drag that blue box, the all-encompassing blue box, so that this formula will automatically sum up, add up all of the numbers within that blue box. And once you hit the close parentheses and enter, bam, it adds it up for you. So if you live in LA and your rent's $2,000 a month, it'll do the addition for you. Or once again, if you're Graham Stephan and if your rent/mortgage is $0 a month effectively, then it'll calculate it for you without you actually having to manually do the math every time, which is great because I like to be lazy when I can be. Now we're gonna go to income here, and people may have different incomes, which is great. Money is money is money. Income and income is income. So I have some performance gigs, teaching gigs, and I might have a side hustle or two. And once again, I'll add amounts that are reasonable but still arbitrary. And I'll do something similar down here with my total income that I did with my expenses earlier. I will hit equals SUM, summoning the sum formula. I'm gonna drag this open here so that it includes everything in those boxes and adds it up. And as long as this is greater than that, then you're good to go. And by liking and subscribing, which I hope you do right now, I'll be able to make some money off these YouTube videos, which will put me up to here. And that is now a personalized budget that you can play with and manipulate on your own. All right, now that we got step 1 out of the way, let's move on to step 2, which is making more income. And how do you make more income? Take on more gigs. When I graduated from my undergraduate studies, I was thankfully in a place where I could fully support myself with performance and teaching gigs. But when I looked at my budget, I found that I needed just a little bit of extra wiggle room, just in case. And I was thankful enough to have a retail job that paid $10 an hour. And I worked several hours a week. And while that may not seem much, it added up to a few $100s a month, which made me that much more comfortable with my budget when I went to sleep at night. I had a conversation a few years later with a fellow musician who was shaming and scoffing at musicians who worked in retail or at non-music jobs. And I disagreed with that. I mean, I think a musician is a musician is a musician, retail or not. And if you got it in here, you got it in here. So take on more gigs to increase your income. Now, step number 3 should be to cut your expenses. Now, if you're in a place where, okay, I'm working a lot and I can't possibly work anymore, it's time to cut those expenses. So let's say you look at your expenses column and you're looking, it's like, well, I have a lease on 2 cars, but I just have 1 body to transport. So maybe you should take that 2 leases and turn it into 1. And let's say, you're looking down further and you're spending $400 on food delivery through Grubhub. And maybe you can cut that down to like $200 or $100, or even just go get Chipotle takeout. I mean, the best thing about Chipotle is you can get a burrito bowl for lunch, eat half because it's so much food, and then you won't have to worry about dinner because it's already there. Chipotle, if you're watching, consider endorsing me. That would be great.
But going out and really thinking about how much you can cut down will help balance out to make your income greater than your expenses. Now, the last two things that I'll talk about are a little bit more advanced, and they go into the idea of financial buffers. My first one is I've never counted on any performance gigs as income. I've never depended on the money that I've derived from them, despite the fact that I've made 5 figures each year from performance gigs for the last however many years. But I always considered it like sprinkle on top, like, cherries on top money, so that if I ever needed to have to pay for something that was an emergency, then I would have that readily available and I wouldn't have to think about it or worry about it, which was kind of a nice thing. And the second thing that I think about is to work within my means and to live within my means. So let's say I make $1,000 guaranteed every month. I don't think of that and say, okay, what can I do to make and spend $1,000 a month? But I think of it as, okay, I make $1,000 a month, but let's see what I can do to only spend 800 of it. And that way I'm consistently contributing more to my savings and creating that buffer space and that wiggle room, so that if my cat goes to the vet, or if I have to go to NTB for like the 8th time in a row for a useless repair, I have the money to do that. So with that said, thanks for sticking around and watching this YouTube video on money for musicians. If you liked it, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to see you next time.